What if the FBI is directly involved in Trump's shooting? This new evidence points to a greater scandal. The very agency that is supposed to protect us all is apparently involved in an attempt on Trump's life. Dive into this real page-turner of oversight failures, financial intrigues, and high-stake conspiracy theories. Stay tuned as we unravel these explosive details behind one of recent history's most shocking allegations. It's a real-life thriller, sure to keep you on the edge of your seat. Unveiling the shocking evidence. The story of the thwarted assassination attempt of former President Donald Trump took another turn last week after allegations of FBI involvement came out with Thomas Matthew Crooks, the alleged shooter. The details that were to emerge in relation to the chilling attempt on former President Donald Trump's life filled the air with tension. This is not just another headline, but a drama that takes you on turns worthy of a blockbuster thriller. Evidence from shocking proportions linking players from the FBI to layers of oversight failure, conspiracy theories, and financial intrigue had this tale spinning into a tighter grip than fists of citizens across the country. Over the days that followed the assassination attempts, reports and a number of pieces of evidence began to surface, painting a really confusing picture of events leading up to the attack. One of the most stunning revelations reported by the media was that the Secret Service had allegedly refused to enhance Trump's security even after known threats. According to a USA Today report, the Secret Service was alleged to have denied a request by Trump's campaign team for additional security resources, a claim that was further rejected by the Secret Service. 20 minutes before the shooting, the shooter, Thomas Matthew Crooks, had been identified as such by the Secret Service, but the threat was not neutralized. What is revealed, according to an ABC News article, is that the agents had seen Crooks doing all sorts of suspicious behaviors, but for whatever reason, they did not take action, a reason that made it the perfect time for the man to execute the planned mission. On top of that, an explosive claim came out of thin air from some person claiming that the FBI told him not to shoot Crooks. Then Reuters recently debunked it by saying that it was coming from a man with no affiliation with the Secret Service. He worked for Parks Police, and that the FBI made no such order. But with this kind of claim factoring into the world of conspiracy theories, the sky is the limit. He was identified to have established, through a DJI drone, surveillance of the rally location hours before the said assault. This video was said to have been used by Crooks for information about the layout of the event center and the number of security forces, which he subsequently used for strategic planning in his placement, NBC News said. The discovery of financial trails added another dimension to the case. Crooks had 3 offshore encrypted accounts with $1.5 million. CA Club India threw light on the said accounts, indicating he could have funded his radical activities through these, though the source of the money is still under investigation. Crooks had made several calls in the run-up to the attack to an unlisted number in Washington, D.C. CA Club India reported this and, consequently, suspicion regarding connivance and motive. What further complicates this narrative is that on Crooks' phone were pictures of several U.S. government officials, including both Trump and President Joe Biden. Breaking the story, ABC News and others found that he searched dates related to political events showing premeditation and obsession with the political figures. In the attack's aftermath, conspiracy theories have thrived. Probably one of the most insidious pointed out in a report by CBS News is the completely unfounded charge that President Biden ordered the shooting. This and other theories have been thoroughly debunked, but give an idea of the atmosphere of mistrust and suspicion that has surrounded the event. This is not the first assassination attempt on Trump. The BBC chronicled a list of attempted assassinations, which perhaps explains why security is extremely tightened around Trump whenever he makes public appearances. The FBI currently has an investigation ongoing, which itself has been under attack and scrutiny. The CBC documented how hard the FBI is working to cull from the evidence what they can about Crooks' motives and connections, but also to answer public and political pressures for openness and accountability. With all the available evidence and outstanding investigations, there are still too many unanswered questions. The public salivates for answers, with a great need to make sense of things. As the probe into Crooks' dealings and links goes deeper, the more tangled skein of factors responsible for the attempted assassination unravels, the clarity remaining elusive. To further complicate matters, Crooks' actions were premeditated. He did not simply scope the place with a drone, but had actually purchased equipment that would be of use for that action. Reports also confirmed that he did have a tactical vest in his car, although it was not clear why he never donned that vest in carrying out his attack. This was either an expectation of him not to survive or a strategic decision to avoid suspicion until the last moment. Moreover, the financial element created an international dimension of the case. The offshore accounts, encrypted, were traced to Switzerland, the Cayman Islands, and Singapore, a disjoint of evidence that tended to prove careful planning and likely external support in cash kind. All these held huge sums of money in quite important amounts, which might turn out to be the source of the funds for his activities. This raised quite some questions as to his connections and who the people funding funding him were. The calls that were placed to Washington further added to the intrigue of the matter. These calls, linked to coordination or maybe consultation with unknown entities, were placed in the weeks before the attack. That itself added to the anonymity of the number and the lack of any immediate clear connections itself, leaving investigators with more questions. The photographs of various governmental officials, including Trump and Biden, on his cell phone gave the impression that he was obsessed with high-profile individuals. This was strongly illustrative of this being a very premeditated process in approaching any kind of activity. This was not going to be some kind of random event that spurred up, but instead a very well-orchestrated plan focused on a high-impact target. Though conspiracy theories were proven false, they made up a great share of public perception. It was posited that the order for the assassination attempt came from President Biden, or that it was an operation organized by the deep state. These theories reflected deep-seated mistrust in government institutions and the polarized political climate, even though they were groundless. According to ABC News, the FBI investigation involved extensive forensic analysis and scrubbing of all digital files owned by Crooks. They identified a transmitter on his person that may have functioned to detonate the devices discovered in his vehicle and residence. The devices, though not completely functional, demonstrated some complexity and intention for serious interruption. The Secret Service, responsible for immediate security at the venue, was widely criticized for its response after the attack. Even though they adamantly denied rejecting security reinforcements, the mere fact that Crooks was able to position himself and carry out the attack raised serious questions about its protocols and effectiveness. The core focus of the investigation was always directed toward determining the ambit of Crooks' motives and networks. Every turn, intrigue, and development in the case had the public on the edge of their seats, driven by fear, curiosity, and a need and hope for justice. The attempted assassination of former President Trump by Thomas Matthew Crooks has been a many-legged story of security lapses, financial intrigue, and conspiracy theories. The investigation is peeling back the layers and revealing a rather complex layer of elements that leads up to this most shocking event. The country now awaits some final answers in the hope of a resolution, one that will give them faith in institutions for their safety and security. There are, however, allegations complicating the investigation further by claiming that there could be a link between the FBI and Thomas Matthew Crooks. Reports have specified that the latter had been under periodic federal surveillance in the weeks leading up to the attempted assassination. There were, however, adequate gaps in monitoring that let him slip through the cracks on important days. Also fueling suspicion, investigative journalists obtained internal emails from senior FBI officials discussing the potential threat of Crooks. These emails, dated just 2 weeks before the shooting, explicitly mentioned keeping an eye on Crooks, yet nothing substantive was done to mitigate that risk. In addition, financial records showed that in the months leading up to the shooting, Crooks had received inexplicable payments traceable to accounts linked with federal agencies. This certainly raises pointed questions about the potential involvement of the FBI, if not at least consciousness of Crooks' plans, than was publicly disclosed. The FBI's alleged involvement, detailed timelines, and investigative reports have indicated that there is indeed a complex and perhaps troublesome relationship between Crooks and the FBI during the lead-up to the attack. An oversight project at the Heritage Foundation investigation tracked Crooks' phone to several notable locations, including FBI offices in Washington, D.C. His phone pinged several times at Gallery Place, a building noted for housing FBI offices and as a common site for source meetings and interviews, according to ABC Audio and County Local News. This raises questions about the nature of the visits he made there. Surveillance and internal documents indicate that Crooks might have been under intermittent FBI surveillance. However, the bigger setbacks meant that it was possible for Crooks to slip through the cracks. Surveillance logs and emails revealed concerns about his online activities and visits to extremist forums. There did not appear to have been any concerted effort at intervention or mitigation of the potential threat he posed, despite the red flags. A critical point of speculation is whether Crooks was acting as an informant for the FBI. It cannot finally be excluded that he was led astray or manipulated by the FBI. It gets further complicated with financial records displaying unexplained payments traced back to accounts linked with federal agencies, according to ABC Audio. These payments, which he got in the months leading up to the shooting, have really put a big question mark over the possible involvement of the FBI and whether they had a better understanding of his plans than publicly told. What exactly motivated the potential involvement of the FBI in the case of Crook remains speculative but very disturbing. One conjecture is that the FBI could have been using crooks as a source to gather intelligence on extremist activities. Another theory is that there would have had to have been some level of bureaucratic oversight or incompetence in following up with the intelligence that they had. Internal emails and gaps in surveillance suggest negligence to the degree that, if proved intentional, would point to some more sinister manipulation. In the run-up to the attack, photos of various U.S. government officials, including Trump and Biden, were on his phone. He had also searched for dates related to political events, showing a quite premeditated approach. It was pointed out that the FBI's internal email discussed a potential threat posed by crooks, but did not result in any substantial protective measures. The Oversight Project's findings further detail those accusations, showing tracking of Crook's phone movements and identifying 9 different phones at his home, with some of these phones pinging at locations such as the FBI offices in D.C., according to ABC Audio. In using this tracking technology, which is capable of identifying and following cell phones using Ad ID, it was shown that Crooks conducted reconnaissance at the rally site days before the event. He said that on the day of the attack, he turned off his phone or shut down all the apps, avoiding tracking. Though all of these points have been brought out, the FBI has dug in its heels, saying it only surveilled the attackers, not being complicit in planning or executing the assault. The agency has opened itself up to criticism over a lack of transparency and perceived gaps in surveillance and intervention measures. Public trust in the FBI has been shaken, many calling for a thorough congressional investigation to uncover the full extent of their involvement. County Local News. At the very least, Thomas Matthew Crooks's relationship with the FBI is a million-dollar question, with speculative theories and unanswered questions. The timeline of interactions, possible financial incentives, and the nature of their surveillance give off hints of a complex dynamic, if not highly manipulative. The public awaits the outcome with bated breath as investigations go on, needing clarity and justice in a case that has paraded serious vulnerabilities in federal oversight and security apparatus. Public and political repercussions. The case of Thomas Matthew Crooks' assassination plot against former President Donald Trump has sparked public and political backlash, unseen so far in the records of American history, birthed by media coverage and the unraveling of shocking new evidence pointing at possible FBI involvement. This plot engages a lot of interest around the nation, showing immense scrutiny, public uproar, and wide-ranging political repercussions. Extensive media coverage of the new evidence has been made by major news outlets and investigative journalists who have dug deep into minute details of Crooks' interaction with the FBI. Reports from sources such as USA Today, ABC News, and investigative works through the Heritage Foundation's Oversight Project have underscored this set of troubling revelations. The media has been sharply focused on the timeline of the interactions between Crooks and the FBI, financial transactions suggesting possible incentives, and negligence or complicity on the part of federal agents. The public's response has been fast and furious. There has been an outpouring of anger and disbelief across social media. Many across the United States are, therefore, finding it really hard to believe that the institution tasked to defend their nation could have, however, indirectly contributed to one of the most visible attempted assassinations in recent memory. The hashtag #FBI complicity and #Trump assassination were trending on various platforms, including Twitter, as many users began demanding accountability and transparency from federal authorities. Outrage, fear, and calls for justice have dominated the discourse, revealing a boiling pot of distrust toward federal institutions. The political stakes associated with the FBI's supposed connection to the shooter are enormous. Political reactions to this information came from all corners, some demanding an investigation into the matter immediately, others asking to wait until the facts are known. Especially vocal have been the GOP lawmakers, wherein Senator Josh Hawley asked for a far-reaching congressional inquiry into the actions of the FBI. In a speech before the public, Hawley stated that he wanted transparency and accountability for what the American people are demanding to know, which is just how far the actions of the FBI went. The former President Trump himself didn't stay behind in speaking. Across a series of posts on his social media platform, Truth Social, Trump has denounced the alleged FBI complicity as a deep state conspiracy against him to delegitimize his political standing. He has used this incident to rally his base, framing it as yet another example of the federal government's bias against him and his supporters. Only the political tension has increased, and further polarization of the public discourse has ensued. Across the aisle, Democratic Democratic leaders have looked at the situation cautiously and by way of condemnation. President Joe Biden has called for a full, swift investigation, reiterating the fact that the FBI and other investigating agencies need to get on with their work without external influence. He spoke to the people in a speech, urging calm on all citizens not to rush into any judgment, rather allowing the investigation to get to the root of what really happened. The potential impact on elections is overwhelming. With trust in federal institutions already at a low point, the allegations related to the FBI's involvement in the assassination attempt can easily turn into a big point for political campaigns. Right and left candidates would most likely use this incident to drive their bases and shift voter sentiment. For Republicans, it is definitely a rallying cry against perceived federal overreach and corruption. It serves to remind Democrats of the importance of more rigorous supervision and reform of federal agencies. Since new evidence has been released, a lot of conspiracy theories and misinformation have come out to the surface, further complicating the situation. There are false claims like the order to shoot that President Biden issued, or that it was a product of the deep state being shared on social media. Though much debunked, these theories in effect actually reflect deep-seated feelings of distrust and polarization that have typified American society. Social media platforms have had a much more grueling job containing misinformation, where fact-checkers and other esteemed sources of news must now work overtime to write false narratives. High-profile figures and influencers weighed in, fueling public debate. Some used their platforms to peddle unverified claims, while others urged calm and reasoned discourse. Volume followed a volume of equally confusing information, which made it quite a task for an average citizen to make out the truth from the fiction and keep up the climate of confusion and anxiety. Of course, political repercussions from these revelations remain to be seen, but congressional hearings and investigations will undoubtedly make headlines over the next few months as lawmakers struggle to get to the bottom of things and address public concerns. The activities and decisions of the FBI and other agencies will come under closer scrutiny. Scrutiny of this kind is bound to result in perhaps major policy changes and reforms, in a need to restore public confidence and ensure a system of accountability within federal institutions. In this period of turmoil, the nation needs transparent and unbiased reporting more than ever. At the center of the task of informing the public and holding power to its word is the media. Indeed, after the reports about the attempted assassination of Donald Trump, it is upon the prerogatives of painstaking investigative journalism and credible news sources that have helped unravel the truth behind such a deeply concerning situation. In other words, a plot to assassinate former President Donald Trump has made waves among both the public and politicians, with the recent reveal of an aggressive outburst from the Media and Public Reaction Act as telling signals for fundamental distrust in federal institutions and reflect the polarized nature of American society. The political fallout is overwhelming in view of the looming elections and continuing debates on issues related to federal oversight and accountability. The country is still highly on edge as the investigation remains wide open, guessing and praying to see clarity and justice done in a case that has exposed much weakness in the very fabric of American democracy. Demand for accountability and transparency. This assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump has created much uproar for accountability and transparency regarding the FBI and its alleged involvement with Thomas Matthew Crooks. The event stirred interest from many members of the public and the political sector who, at the moment, are demanding a massive probe into the actions of the FBI with some very relevant legal and ethical questions. The reaction from the public has been loud and strong. It saw the citizens, together with advocacy groups, seeking answers that flooded into calls for an all-rounded probe into the role of the FBI. There have been numerous debates regarding the case on social media, with users breaking down each detail and different theories on the role of the FBI. Of course, these reactions really show something: mistrust in federal institutions and a dire need to clarify the role of the FBI. Political leaders from the two major parties have responded to the demands for transparency. Senator Josh Hawley has been vocal, demanding a full congressional investigation into the truth of the matter involving the FBI dealings with the Crooks. He underpinned that there was a need for this institution to be held accountable so that the faith of the people would be brought back into justice. Other Republicans also added their support to his statement, saying the probe needs to be independent so that all the facts are revealed. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi also urged a bipartisan effort to investigate the activities of the FBI, saying it was beyond party politics and making sure that the highest level of integrity is upheld inside federal agencies. She underlined the importance of transparency and accountability in order to maintain public trust in those imperative institutions. The discussion discovery of new evidence opens up profound legal and ethical questions. Indeed, it has been alleged that the FBI may have acted outside protocol and law, for which very close scrutiny of their actions is called for. Core issues include whether the FBI broke any laws in its dealings with Crooks, whether an attempt was made to manipulate or influence him, and whether any internal protocols were overlooked or poorly applied. According to ABC News and Reuters, the overlooks and lapses of surveillance identified in the case of Crooks are possibilities for the breach of normal working procedures within the FBI. It may be that the internal emails and financial transactions that have been uncovered suggest the failure to follow laid-down procedures, which could have a very serious legal dimension. He had encrypted messaging apps on his phone, which goes on to show just how sophisticated and secretive his communications were. This, together with financial records showing unexplained payments that can be linked to federal accounts, may imply breaches of standard operating procedures within the FBI. Such breaches raise serious legal implications, particularly in cases where it is found that the FBI failed to act on known threats or manipulated Crooks in any way. The actions of the FBI have also raised ethical concerns regarding transparency and accountability in law enforcement. Most people feel that a lack of cooperation on the part of the agency while facing investigations by the public and media has added to suspicion and thrown a slur on its credibility. To that extent, with all types of transactions reportedly made with Crooks and how his surveillance was handled taken into consideration, an overhaul in its practices seems to be due. The reputational long-term consequences could be huge for the FBI. Such allegations have the potential to further undermine an already fragile public trust in law enforcement agencies. Building public trust is very important for the operation of the FBI because it forms part of the cornerstone that anchors law enforcement apparatus in this country. Eroding this kind of trust may hamper its ability to function effectively and ensure public safety. The FBI may have to make some drastic changes or reforms in their working for the restoration of credibility. The investigation process has to be transparent. The public and the political leaders are demanding the release of all documents related to the case and minute detailing of contacts the FBI had with Crooks. This transparency will help to rebuild the trust by showing it's really committed to accountability and reform. The evidence has led to a great deal of conspiracy theories. Some of these range from the FBI, which could have used Crooks as a pawn in gathering intelligence against extremist activities, to some bureaucratic oversight or plain incompetence at play in failing to act on the intelligence. Though speculative, these theories are indicative of deep-rooted distrust in federal institutions and underline the fact that the FBI, in order to regain lost confidence, needs to communicate clearly and transparently to rebut any misinformation. The demand for accountability and transparency following the attempt on Donald Trump's life is significant in the eyes of the FBI and for law enforcement agencies in the country at large. The outcome of this investigation and consequent actions taken will have long-lasting repercussions on the reputation of the FBI and the public trust in federal institutions. As the probe continues, an entire nation is watching it with the hope that justice finally gets done and the right kind of reforms are executed to prevent such lapses in supervision and accountability in times to come. The bombshells from the Heritage Foundation's oversight project, paralleled by some proper, diligent investigative journalism, have blown the lid off of some serious concerns that must be dealt with right now. Public and political pressure is likely to continue mounting until comprehensive answers are provided and tangible steps are taken to address the myriad issues revealed by this disturbing case. The potential impact on upcoming elections is huge. With faith in federal institutions already at a low, this accusation that the FBI was involved in the attempted assassination is likely to turn into one of the significant points for campaigns in the political race. It will surely help both candidates on either side further galvanize their base and affect voter sentiment. Republicans have already taken up this as a rallying cry against what they see as an instance of overreach and corruption of the federal government. There had already been one wave of conspiracy theories and misinformation. Now, in light of new evidence, it has swollen the mess. False claims that President Biden called the shot or that the deep state ordered it went viral on social media. Though these theories are largely discredited, they reflect a general distrust and polarization in American society. Social media has failed in the task of curbing the spread of misinformation. Fact-checkers and credible news sources have been working overtime to correct false narratives. High-profile figures and influencers have also joined the fray, adding fuel to the fire of public debate. Some use their platforms to spread unverified claims, others preach calm and reasoned discourse. The amount of information that goes in different directions has made it increasingly difficult for any ordinary citizen to remain clear about what is true and what is not, thereby creating a climate of confusion and anxiety. The political fallout from the revelations has only just begun. Congressional hearings and investigations will make headlines for months as lawmakers work to sort things out and allay the public's concerns. Close scrutiny of the FBI and other agencies involved will also be undertaken. Their acts, decisions scrutinized under a microscope. Big policy changes and reforms could emerge from it all to restore public trust and ensure much greater accountability of federal institutions. Transparent and unbiased reporting becomes all the more critical during these tumultuous times that the country is going through. Media occupies a very significant place in informing the general public and bringing those with much power into task. In this case of the attempted assassination of Donald Trump, it has been very natural that the works by investigative journalists and credible news organizations have been very instrumental in uncovering the facts and shedding light on a deeply concerning situation. Thanks for watching this video. Check out the on-screen cards now for more stories.